Well, 2 months ago, Josh and I met, and we said, hey, it would be great to have a discussion on immigration. And some things happened this week, and we're going to talk about those things. And you know what? That's not necessarily our timing, that is God's timing. So we're grateful to have this conversation today. What we want in the Biola Hour is to provide a space for us to think through issues, for us to wrestle with both sides of an issue. And that's what we're going to do today. So the first part of the chapel is a conversation with Josh and I. The second part of the chapel, you guys are going to be able to text in and social media in questions, and we will be able to answer them at that time. Well, Josh is a pastor up in Monrovia at Mountainside Communion, and he, through his church, has started the Immigration Resource Center of the San Gabriel Valley. Will you join me in welcoming him? Well, Josh, thank you for being here.
It's great to be here.
All right. And my first question for you is, how did you start the Immigration Resource Center from your church? What happened in your church, and how did that come about?
We could spend the whole time talking about this amazing story, really, of God's faithfulness and vocational call on the life of our congregation. We, a number of years ago, the leadership of our church went on a spiritual discernment retreat to try to discern together what is God calling us to in the future in our community. And we spent a little bit of time on that in that weekend in a passage from Luke chapter 10. Are we okay?
Yeah, the mic's kind of breaking out, so I want to find a different handheld mic for you.
Oh, okay.
Can't find it.
Can you put it on your lap?
Oh, yeah.
It's just a signal.
Okay.
All right.
There.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
Luke chapter 10. Okay.
And in that passage, you all memorized it, right? You all know it? That was a joke. You can laugh about that. Yeah. This is Biola, right? Come on, the Bible Institute, right? In that passage, Jesus sends out the 70, and he sends them out 2 by 2. He tells them to go on the road, to take nothing with them, that you're going to be like sheep among wolves, and to go to the cities where I send you and offer peace, shalom. And if the peace is returned to you, to stay there, to eat food, to work the harvest, to heal the sick, and to proclaim that the kingdom of God has come near. And so in that weekend, we got this idea that we want to go like these disciples.
Yeah.
And we want to engage people in our community as subjects of God's mission. That was the terminology we kind of came up with. Not objects of God's mission, but subjects. And so we had been befriended this youth organization in our town called the Monrovia Youth Alliance. And they described themselves as an at-risk youth organization. And so we did what we knew how to do, which was throw parties, play games, bring pizza, do all the youth group kind of things. And they did what they knew how to do, which was bring incredible food, dance, and we just had a great time. And so one thing led to another, and we began to do some tutoring with them. They began to worship with us. They asked us to baptize some of their kids. They told us testimonies and stories. And we got to know those stories, which were stories of immigration. And so that relationship is really what launched us into exploring what does it mean to be a good neighbor and to love our neighbor.
Wow, so basically you're saying your church was trying to be a church.
I suppose so.
Your church was trying to reach out to your neighbors. And as you guys are reaching out to your neighbors, you realize, hey, you know what? There are a lot of immigrants. There's a lot of need here. We want to be able to support the needs of our community.
That's right.
So what are some of the obstacles that you faced in establishing the IRC?
Well, really it was obstacles for our friends. These people became our friends. And their stories mattered to us. And so one day their leader said to us, hey, there's something new called DACA, which we're all aware of from this week. And a lot of our kids and their families are eligible for this. And so would you help us get this going and help them apply? This was a number of years ago. The night before we were going to kick this off, we had a member of our church working in City Hall, and a woman came in and said, hey, is anyone doing immigration around here? I'm an immigration attorney, and I'm looking for a way to participate. And so just by God's sovereignty and providence, Patty Corrales began to help us. And so we worked with a bunch of students and young people to get DACA. So DACA became a real avenue for a lot of these people and overcame an incredible obstacle.
Great.
Obstacles for us are obstacles that we all face, and that is the complexity of immigration. And the challenges that are inherent in a complex reality like this. And making it equally hard is that a lot of times the dialogue is very polarized. It's this or that. And we're trying to talk about a reality that is not this or that. We're talking about people from all over the world coming here for all kinds of reasons.
Right.
And that is a major obstacle in terms of trying to move forward and discerning what God's doing.
Okay. Well, I want to go back to DACA.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to explain what DACA is.
Okay.
So what is DACA, and what are some of the ramifications of DACA?
Okay. DACA stands for Deferred Action of Childhood Arrivals. And right after this, our staff attorney is going to be doing a luncheon, and he can go into all the details about these kinds of things. But basically what it does is it means that people who have DACA are not going to be deported for 2 years. They're promised you won't be deported for 2 years. And you can work and pay taxes, and you can get a driver's license.
Okay.
And so that's essentially what DACA is.
So DACA says you could get a driver's license and you can work and basically pay taxes and pay to Social Security, but you don't benefit from Social Security. You don't get any of those benefits. So what's the point? Like, why is that even a good thing?
Right. It's a good question. I live on a fairly busy street in my town, and a number of years ago, a woman named Christy would walk down my street. She lived a block and a half from me, and I didn't know Christy, but I would see her most days. She would walk to work very quietly, and she would do her job, and she would walk home. Ends up, she's a part of the Monrovia Youth Alliance that we ended up getting to know her.
Yeah.
And so then she would walk and she would see me and she would lift her head and she would say hi. And then she would put her head back down and she would walk to work.
Yeah.
And over time, what I realized was she was undocumented. She had been brought here by her mom when she was 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
She had been involved in the schools. And she was a prime candidate for DACA. And so what happened was once she received DACA, which sounds like such a minimal benefit,
Right.
a veil and reality of fear was removed from her. And I could see it in her posture as she walked down my street with her head up. Eventually she drove down my street, and now she's a medical assistant working in a medical office, but also now, as of Tuesday, really asking some serious questions of herself.
Yeah. So you said the veil of fear was dropped, right?
That's right.
Is that veil of fear now back up now that President Trump wants to rescind the DACA? And maybe not Christy's story, but maybe what are some of the other stories you hear of fear and worry and anxiety that you might have run into this week?
Tuesday morning, we watched the announcement in our Immigration Resource Center board meeting. One of the people in that meeting is undocumented, and so we talked to her. And she's hopeful that Congress will act in the next 6 months, and she's praying for that. But yes, it adds a whole just the fear. It comes back, and if not fear, uncertainty, massive uncertainty.
Yeah.
That it's hard to understand. It's hard for me to understand if we don't experience it.
Right. So, it seems like with something like DACA, it seems like we're helping to support illegal immigration. So with illegal immigration, isn't that like if we support DACA, isn't that like we're supporting people who break the laws? Or isn't it important to have laws in place in our society so that we can flourish?
The luncheon is going to be great. Jonathan's going to do a really nice job. Absolutely, laws are essential. The pastoral and theological response really to that question, and it's something that we have to ask ourselves a lot, and I would encourage all of you to ask yourself, is when you come to all of these questions, are you coming primarily as a citizen of America?
Okay, good.
Or are you coming as a citizen of God's coming kingdom.
That's good.
And that doesn't solve the complexity.
Right.
It doesn't make all answers simple and clear, or Sunday school-ish.
Yes.
But it does cause you to just shift a little bit in your priorities. And then the second thing, and I'm not trying to shirk that question because it's a really important question.
Absolutely.
And there's all sorts of things about DACA, and especially these dreamers that we're talking about this week in particular. Like immigration's like this, right? Dreamers this week is right here.
Right.
But this is what we're talking about. There's all sorts of cultural and national priorities that we enjoy and embrace that are just as much a part of this equation as their choice to come here.
Okay.
Or their parents, I should say, choice to come here. And so the second reality, and what I wish more people, I guess, knew and understood about this is to know someone in those shoes. Before you start talking, if we start talking laws right away, we fall into these polarized echo chambers. And the line of sand that we draw are the lives of these people. And so to know those people and to come at it as a citizen of God's kingdom, I think are the starting points that we want to be at.
So Josh, we're going to answer a few questions, and here's our first one.
Okay.
If DACA was removed, how would that affect the U.S. and our school? And just so you know,
Our school, Biola. Yeah.
And our context is, I know that there are a few DACA students here. I think
Sure.
there's about 15 to 20 I heard this week. So
Yeah. If DACA is removed and immigration reform is not worked on, from the experience of friends of mine, they would be in a very tough spot, because once again they would be in a place, the only place that they've known as home,
right.
and they would be in constant fear of deportation to a place that's not their home.
Right.
And being here by no decision of their own. And so those students, and there's probably more, if whatever number they give you at Biola, there's probably more.
Right.
Those students would be, my understanding is they would be living in a fear that had been relieved for at least a little while.
Yeah. Great. I had a question for you. It just kind of popped up while you were speaking. I read a stat, another statistic this week. If all the 800,000 or so DACA recipients were removed, number one, it would take $60 billion to remove them, and then it would also be $280 billion hit to our economy.
Oh wow!
Why would we want DACA removed then?
Right. I don't know why we would want DACA removed. And that's just where I'm coming from.
Right.
And that's not to disregard the realities of the need and a need for bipartisan, compassionate, wise immigration reform.
Yeah.
We need that. I think everybody agrees with that.
Yeah.
But the devil's in the details.
Right.
And when you have two parties that can't elevate the dialogue, people suffer.
Yeah.
So I don't know all the statistics. Honestly, Jonathan would be able to help with more of that. But I like I said, these not only these 800,000 people, but the families that they're a part of are integrally involved in our culture, in our community, in our economy. Entrepreneurs. I mean, we would face some real loss.
Great. Thanks. Here's another question for us. Is there something about the immigration conversation you wish people knew or understood better that you haven't touched on yet?
I think I would just reiterate, I wish people in political dialogues especially would know someone, would love someone that is an immigrant or that is undocumented or that is a recipient of DACA.
Right.
Prior to entering into heated arguments.
Yeah, like you said, the sand in the line, the line in the sand, those are people.
Yeah, that's right.
And we're affecting them.
It's people's lives, yeah.
Yeah. Let's go to another question. How do you respond to Christians who aggressively disagree with DACA? how can we understand their perspective? And maybe how can we even care for them?
Yeah, absolutely. Most Christians that I talk to who disagree with DACA,
Yeah.
it has more to do with the way DACA came about
Okay.
than it even has to do with DACA itself, or at least that's how it's described to me
Okay.
on my Facebook feeds.
Which is not an echo chamber.
That's right. No, never. So I think starting a conversation about people, I don't want to just go back to the same answer, but I think there's a commonality there for anyone. Is like, all right, you disagree. That's great. Let's talk about the people that we know in common. Let's talk about the experience that they're having. And let's begin to elevate the dialogue to what compassionate, bipartisan immigration reform might be able to look like. Because I think there is common ground.
Right. I mean, these are people who grew up here.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, shouldn't we support them and help them in this middle weird ground that they're living in?
Right.
Great. All right. Here's another question. Jesus commands us to obey the government of whatever land we're in. In terms of immigration, do the ends justify the means?
Yeah, Jesus teaches us a lot of things.
He does.
Jesus himself got in trouble. One of my mentors used to say he got in trouble for eating good food with bad people, or the wrong people.
Right.
Jesus comes from a prophetic tradition in the Old Testament that has a lot to say about how the people of God treat the foreigner and the resident alien among us.
Yeah.
And in some cases, God's blessing on a people is linked with, among a lot of things, how they treat the foreigner and the resident alien. So many of obviously, in our country, the civil rights movement came about from people peacefully protesting laws and ways of life in the country. So there's ways to change things that we need to be intricately involved in and learn how to do that. So I think you don't want to. A question like that can lend towards an overly simplistic answer, and I don't want it to do that.
Right.
But we do stand in a tradition, a prophetic tradition, in the Christian faith that we need to take serious.
Right. And if there's an unfair law, it's not like we just want to. We do obey it to a certain degree, but we still want to push back or advocate for certain changes too.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. Here's another question, Josh. Ooh, it's a long one. Okay. With DACA and immigration, it's very easy to get caught in either the hard facts of the argument or the emotional side of the argument, which can be very polarizing. How do you suggest balancing the proper emotional response with the proper response to legal and administrative fact?
Yeah, like a question like that, it depends on the context of what you're talking about, right? Like, if there's a neighbor in front of you, what would be the second response there? Like, would that mean to call law enforcement on them, or to, like, those are challenging questions when in a complex issue like immigration.
Yeah.
To know, like, okay, what exactly does that look like? So I hope that makes sense. I'm thinking of Christy, like, what would that look like when she walked down my street? And what it's looked like for our church is to start what's called the Immigration Resource Center in San Gabriel Valley, which by definition, we are coming alongside immigrants to try to help them get legalized and obey the law. So that's what our approach has been, is how do we organize ourselves in a way to not only come alongside emotionally, empathetically, relationally, but to come alongside in terms of navigating the legal system as well.
Yeah, great. Here's another question. And the question is, what happens to these kids when they get deported? And they're not necessarily kids, they're like in college and working now, right?
Yeah.
But what does deportation process look like? Where do they end up living?
Yeah. What happens to these kids is they're deported to their country of origin. I don't know what deportation looks like. Jonathan may be able to help us in the next hour, and for me to say much more than that would be kind of guessing.
Okay.
The third question was, if we can, do you remember what it was?
Where do they end up living?
I mean, if the ducks fell or the dominoes fell, they would end up living in their family's country of origin, which in Christy's case, she had lived for 5 years of her life.
Right. So like, let's just say I'm a DACA recipient, and I'm Korean, and I read some statistics today that Koreans are actually one of the higher ones in the Asian community. And so then if my parents, and they did immigrate to the United States, and I was a DACA recipient, I would be flown back to Korea,
Correct.
where I have no idea what it is. I was born in America, so I would be flown back to Korea and just dropped somewhere. So something like that.
That's my understanding. Yeah, and again,
right.
This is Jonathan's territory. My territory is the theological part of this. But yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and for me, it's like my Korean's okay, but my Korean's not that good.
Right.
And so I'm figuring out navigating a whole new life.
That's right.
Okay.
And this just gets at the complexity of this, right? And why dialogue and conversation needs to be much more elevated.
Absolutely. All right. Here's another question. This is from John Garcia, a tweet. He asks, can we talk about how a robust doctrine of the image of God can help us love undocumented immigrants better?
Thank you, John. I found myself, as we sang all of these songs, and really the Psalms are given to us in this way. Like we sing these songs beautifully this morning, and we think about ourselves. But what would it be to sing these songs as a form of prayer with someone else from a different social location, in this case, undocumented immigrants, in mind?
Right.
You're a good father. It's who you are. It's who you are. And they're loved by you.
Yeah.
For an example. So I think, and that gets at what I said earlier, when we come at this conversation as an American Christian, it puts us in a certain posture. If we come at this question or this issue as a Christian who happens to be American, then we need to come with a conviction that, all of these people are made in the image of God and deserve well-being and God's shalom.
Yeah, great. Do you have a story of how maybe you demonstrating love to a person made in the image of God, maybe an undocumented person, has usurped even like the citizenship of being an American, or how that demonstrated your love, and they were able to say, oh, you know what? I like that Jesus.
You know how I might flip that, Mike? I mentioned the Luke 10 story earlier, and what ended up happening after we had engaged with children, families who were undocumented, and we went back to our Bibles, we formed a group in our church who shared immigration stories. What it was like to immigrate from rural Oregon to LA. Like it opened up this whole dialogue for people in our church that was not there. And we went back to Luke 10 and realized we're not the ones on the road.
Wow.
That's an immigration story, right?
Yeah.
Go 2 by 2. Don't take much with you. If anyone talks to you, don't look at them, right?
Yeah.
If you get somewhere, offer peace, and if it's returned, eat what's there. And all of a sudden, we realized these stories were helping us understand better what it means to follow Jesus on the way. Hebrews talks about offering hospitality, because you might just find yourself offering hospitality to an angel, right? And so it actually turned all of that on its head for us. And we realized oh, God brought us these friends to teach us what it means to follow Jesus on the way.
Love that. Love that. Great. Here's another question for us. How can we effectively speak about immigration without shaming or victimizing the person?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something that I've had to learn, just coming from a social location where I'm at, and learning new habits and new language. For me, it's been understanding the breadth of immigration, and how people, speaking of DACA recipients or people who are eligible for DACA, understanding how they are caught up in something much, much bigger than their decisions, even their family's decisions. And naming that reality helps in terms of not pinning one person with all the weight of this because somebody made one decision a long time ago.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. And Josh, as we close, we ask a question to all of our Biola Hour guests, which is, what are some of the biblical principles that help guide some of your thoughts today? And we talked about Luke 10, but is there anything else from the Bible that might help shape and develop some of our thoughts in this?
Yeah. Mike kind of told me this question was coming, so
that's okay.
And I could read for another 20 minutes, but I won't. But Leviticus says, do not take advantage of foreigners who live among you in your land. Treat them like native-born Israelites. Love them as you love yourself.
Yeah.
Remember that you were once foreigners living in the land of Egypt. It starts there. And the Psalms talks about welcoming strangers. Deuteronomy talks about this. The minor prophets. Jeremiah links, like I said earlier, our care for migrants and resident aliens with God's favor for a people in a country. Jesus himself, in Matthew 25, says, in the story of the sheep and the goats, I was a stranger, and you welcomed me in. Paul, who talks about obeying laws and the importance of that. Certainly, in Romans 12, also talks about extending hospitality to strangers. And then in Hebrews, I guess I would just end with that. Let mutual love continue. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing that, some have entertained angels without knowing it. And then he talks about marriage and money right after that.
Great. Let's thank Josh for his time today.
Biola University prepares Christians to think biblically about everything, from science to business to education and the arts. Learn more at biola.edu.